Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode on Living on the Edge of Chaos podcast. This is Aaron, aka Coffee Chug, and I am here with a guest today that I am just super fascinated to have this conversation with. I was telling her before the recording, it's kind of a recent discovery within my resource of learning about people who have such fascinating and important, I think, perspectives around AI. And I think really not just AI, but for a lot of this stuff, like humanity and just how we think about stuff and frame how we see the world. And so I'm here today with Rebecca Bultsma, who I'm super just pumped to see where this conversation is going to go. I will give her a chance to introduce herself here, but as I was looking through her, I mean, she has a whole bunch of probably adjectives that can go behind her name there, between AI strategist, an educator, communicator, stuff in the ethics in terms of advocacy around there, helping schools and organizations try to navigate this work. And I just want to start off before I get into like something that I truly love that I saw on your website, prepare for this. But first, welcome you to the show, Rebecca. And as I ask everybody as we kick things off, who are you? What do you do? And what in the world do you got going on?
I love that question. I feel like we could have a whole podcast on that.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
I am so happy to be here, Aaron. Thanks for making time. Honestly, my favorite thing to do is talk about AI and the world relating to AI and people in the AI space and how AI impacts people. So I appreciate any opportunity to do that. I'm actually in Canada. Right now, I'm at our farm, which is about 15 minutes from the Montana-US border. So I'm pretty close. And I have 4 grown-up kids in college and married to my high school sweetheart. And my background is communications, public relations, marketing. And within a few days of ChatGPT hitting the airwaves, November of just a few years ago, 2022, I immediately had like an out-of-body experience and wanted to know as much as possible about the technology and how it worked. And I couldn't find anyone who didn't work in computer science who could explain it to me in normal language. So I just started learning in public and posting what I was learning and trying to help other people figure it out too. And the more I learned, the more problems I started to see. So I began researching AI ethics at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and eventually evolved to kind of doing this full time. I live in this space between I'm fascinated and amazed by the technology. I try every new product and tool and capability as it comes out, while also being situated in the ethics space where I think about everything that could possibly go wrong and all the societal problems that we're going to see. And so I just live in this space of dissonance. That's basically how I live my life. So I have a podcast. I am writing a book. I do a lot of keynote speaking and training around Canada and North America, United States, everywhere. A lot for educators, a lot for businesses and small businesses and individuals, leaders, just anyone who wants to know a little bit more and isn't looking for like a rah-rah girl specifically, then right. I'm often a good fit for things like that. But yeah, that's kind of what keeps me busy. I like to read a lot about the latest news and the latest research. So I'm actually pretty boring. All I do is read. If we just boil it all the way down, all I do is really read and play with AI. So that's what I do.
There are worse things we could be doing with our time. And I know when I first came across some of your LinkedIn posts, that's what first like gravitated me towards like the work that you're doing. It's how I discovered you. And I started like back reading and I was just loving that. And I went to your website and your About Me page and I love the very first line. And I have to call it out because I think it's just like it's simple and there's so much more to it, the work you do. But you say, I help people understand AI without freaking out or falling asleep. And I'm thinking about all this back to school work that I do to help school teachers get ready, even though they got a million things on their plate. And then it's just the seasons of a school year as well, And so as you're talking about, you're learning, you're reading, and then you're trying to figure out how to make sense of it all because you couldn't find someone to help you kind of make sense of it all. For those listening in, and this world changes about every 4 seconds, it seems like. Your 30-second elevator pitch. What is this AI space that has created all this conundrum and, everybody has an opinion, whether they have an understanding. How do you just, someone's like, help me understand. What's your answer to that?
I just basically tell people that they've been using AI for a long time, right? Like it's been around since your very first Yahoo or Hotmail email account, filtering spam out of your inbox and powering like your LinkedIn algorithm or your Netflix recommendations. What changed is in November of 2022, just in one tweet or X post, Sam Altman released a free version of this product called ChatGPT, and it's a different type of AI. It's generative AI, it's called, and it just makes brand new stuff. It generates brand new stuff. And it had been kind of around, but not working great in the background for a long time. But this dropped available to everyone for free on the same day and with no instruction manual. And so we've all been trying to figure it out ever since. But that's what makes this generative AI different than the AI that's been kind of working in the background of our lives already. And it's brought with it a whole bunch of new capabilities, but also challenges and risks. And so since that day, November 30th, 2022, we've been just trying to figure it all out. And it's been going at light speed ever since.
Yeah. And so I've been in this headspace lately where, I think about it still feels new because I feel like every day there's an update, there's a change, there's an adjustment, there's an opinion, there's this, there's that, the other, right? Which I love out. I mean, give me my pot of coffee and let me nerd out, man, I'm there.
Same.
And then I think about I continue to work with people and have these conversations. There's so many that still haven't really dabbed their toe into it much. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, because it's still new. But then I have this I'm having this like argument in my head where I'm like, but at the same time, it has been around for almost 3 years. Like, how have you not tried? Right? So regardless of where people are, when you're looking at AI, whether that's in schools or in communications or all the platforms you're working with, currently, what are some of the things that you feel like people are getting wrong? Not like, oh, you're wrong as people, but either where they're focusing the wrong way, or maybe they just have a misconception, which is either preventing them, or, we talked about even before the show a little bit, some people just think all this is the greatest thing ever. I call it like the shiny toy object syndrome, right? And this could happen with anything. Like, ooh, look at this tech. Like, I got to buy it. I don't know why I need it. I just got to buy it. My Amazon shopping cart would show that I actually probably should listen to
Same. Anything Apple releases, I buy.
I should listen to my advice. So I'm preaching to the choir here. But what are you seeing as you're working with people? Not maybe wrong, but maybe just more like some misconceptions that still exist, even though it's been around for a few years.
Around for a few years, but I just don't think it's been in like mainstream public consciousness until like maybe the last year. And some people still, it's not even really in their realm. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I see is that people think it's just like a fad or a phase, or it's not that big of a deal, or it's just hype and it's going to taper off. And I don't think that is true. I really think this is just the way the world is going to work now. And so it's important to understand it. I think another kind of misconception that people have, depending on the people, some people are like, I don't need to learn this. This won't be helpful for my life. And the truth is, I don't care who you are. And this is a challenge I'll throw out to everyone who's a listener. You give me 5 minutes of your time, I will show you a way that generative AI can be incredibly valuable to you in your everyday life and your everyday work. So there is some way that it is valuable for everybody. And so I think that's another misconception that I hear a lot too. And then also, not even a misconception, but a perception. People are just overwhelmed. It's in the news. They hear about 50 different tools or see all these demos and they just don't even know where to start. People are overwhelmed. And so they're just frozen and they don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. So they're just not interested or waiting for their employers to train them, which might not happen for a while. So I think people need to know that it's a little bit easier than they might think to get started.
Sure. It kind of reminds me, I was doing some writing. I don't have this one flushed out yet to be on any sort of blog or website, but I've been processing a lot about you're talking about is this there's this oversaturation, right? Like you can't read or go anywhere without
Hmm.
some sort of like AI feature or in the headlines, good, bad, or whatever. It's
Hmm.
just everywhere. And it kind of reminds me of being like back in middle school when I used to have hair and younger, where like there was these things that everyone just acted like they knew because it was always in conversation. But really, if we were to give any of us a pop quiz, we probably really didn't know what that slang term meant or what that thing was that we saw on TV or in a TV show. We just all acted like we did, right? And I kind of feel that's how
Hmm.
AI is to some space. It's just, it's so much in our space. We kind of like, I think, like assume we know what it is, even if we've never actually like used it ourselves, which I think is an interesting headspace for a lot of folks right now. Just, and it becomes overwhelming. Where do I begin? Right. And
Yeah.
so, you talked about, if you had 5 minutes of someone's time, you could show them an everyday use, so like for you, like what have been some ahas? You're tinkering around, you're playing around, someone's listening in going, okay, what is a quick win? She said it, 5 minutes, give me my time, and obviously this isn't going to apply to everyone, but like for you, what's been like a recent little like quick win that you're like, oh, this has helped me and I don't need to read a book. I don't need, I don't need to take a
Yeah.
course. It works.
Yeah, there's a ton of really, really interesting use cases. A very, very simple one, especially if you're, in the ed leadership space or even just a regular person, take terms and conditions that usually sign without reading
Yeah.
and give them to a generative AI and have it act like a lawyer and pull out anything that you might need to know or that you would find unexpected in there. And honestly, I just did it recently with the McDonald's app. And there's stuff in there that you would never expect. And so that's
Oh,
kind of an interesting quick win for the next time that you have to assign some terms and conditions. I think I really like generating images, right? Of really unexpected things that don't exist. Like I'll ask for school images of kids in the 1930s in schools using laptops. And they're so realistic now, and they're just kind of a fun take on reality, generating things that didn't exist before. I
mm,
think my other favorite is for sure NotebookLM, 100%. It's a Google product, but
yes.
you can give it for really complex research papers, or my son would give it his financial accounting university course PowerPoints. And then you tell it to explain everything in a podcast to you in basketball analogies, something you're interested in, right? And it can help you understand information and synthesize and help you draw connections between ideas and concepts and make them more palatable and interesting for however you like to consume information. So that's always a quick win for me. I always like to be learning, and you can give it two totally different papers. I could give it like a YouTube video about the Outer Banks Netflix show and a research paper about large language models, and it will create a podcast that uses both those concepts together. So I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of fun.
I love that. I could piggyback off that. I have one of my children, well, two of them are in college, but my one is not a huge fan of reading all the assigned readings. Um, he's also in football and he's working and just all the things. So I also know time is part of this time management element of college. And so I showed him Google Notebook where he's been able to load in the presentations and his notes and create these podcasts. And while he is working where he's active, he likes auditory. He can process it that way. So he's been creating these podcasts to help him. Or he had one class where he's like, I actually do want to learn this. I just don't flat out understand it. So, writing it at a 10th grade level and, just those
Mm-hmm.
different modalities for learners. And I think that's awesome for students. But I think even just for us, I think sometimes we forget that as adults, like that helps us too. We don't have to necessarily be in quote unquote school to continue to want to learn. And there are these platforms that are very easy to use once you just click around a little bit. I know there's always a little bit of a learning curve for people who are new, but I mean, Google Notebook, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward tool once you
Mm-hmm.
add some tools and click some buttons and you can't break
Yeah.
anything.
It's an app on your phone too. So they have it in the App Store to try out.
Yeah, yeah. So another thing that I was reading about your work that I wanted to hear more on is I've seen you talk about in some shape or form this idea, as we start maybe thinking about the ethics and also leveraging these tools and dabbing our toe and almost this this awareness piece too of, as I've seen you read and write and say, to never trust a large language model, so a large language model would be ChatGPT, it'd be Copilot for those who maybe are new to this AI space. Talk to me, unpack that a little bit, because I think it's important, because I think, as we've already alluded to, sometimes people share things as if it's the greatest thing ever, and there are wonderful applications. I use AI all the time, but I also know there's the other side that we also have to be aware of, that we are kind of pawns in this bigger technology making money space as well. So talk to me a little bit about this aspect of never trusted LLM that I've seen you discuss online.
I think it's important for people to understand on the back end how these large language models work. Large language models are like a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Google Gemini that excel in language, but they come across as being smart and thinking, but they're actually not. They're really just giant autocorrect, auto prediction text machines. They are just really good at finding patterns in human language and then parroting back to you what it thinks you want to hear in a pattern that sounds like a poem or whatever you asked for. And they don't necessarily know the difference between what's true or what's false. We as humans can barely agree on that, but you just have to know that as you use these tools, they will say everything with absolute confidence and give you answers with absolute confidence. But that human oversight is required all the time, because some of it's just not accurate, especially if it's not drawing from information on the internet. Let's say it might have a knowledge cutoff date of a certain time, or if it just wants to make you happy and it doesn't have the information or know the answer, it's going to tell you something that sounds right, but it might not actually be accurate. So that fact-checking piece is usually what I talk about. I don't always necessarily recommend using AI as a source of information if you need something to be actually accurate. More as like a source of creativity and idea generation and pairing ideas and a thought partner to help you think bigger and differently about things. If you're going to use it, there are great ways to use it as an information source. Don't get me wrong. NotebookLM, you can give it tons of information and it has the information there to draw from. It's very, very unlikely to hallucinate. But if I just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, who won this World Series, or what's this lesser known fact, it might not be accurate. People treat it like a Google, not necessarily working the same way as a Google.
Sure. So why do you think that I'm going to build off that, because I feel like people fall into this trap when they start using these tools, whatever tool it is, where they start to almost overtrust the AI outputs, and this is more of just your perspective on this. This is by no means, I didn't set you up to like, oh, here's my academic research paper on this. So, but like, as you're out speaking and reading through this, I see this time and time again I try to help students understand this of like, we can't trust everything, right? There are ways in which we can leverage this to help us, but it's not an authority. People still fall into this trap. At the time of this recording, there's been a lot of articles coming out. One I've been sharing a lot lately from the Harvard Business Review, like the number one use of AI in 2025, which is shifted from last year, is on therapy and companionship. And not that that's directly tethered to the overtrusting of AI, but I think there is a signal really big in all the noise of AI. I'm curious, like, what's your thoughts on that? How do you talk to people, or just your thoughts as you're navigating that and working with people? Because it's one thing I find, like, you got to get using it, because once you start using it, it's going to unlock these questions you didn't know you should be asking, which are really powerful conversations to have with people. But on the flip side, I see people, once they start doing that, really, really liking it. And then even as adults, we overtrust it to a fault. And it's like, okay, we gotta bring that back a little bit. What are you seeing, noticing, thoughts that you have around that space?
I think this is one of the risks of having like a tool that comes out with no instructions. And I think the reason this is happening is because it's so amazing at mimicking human language that it sounds like you're talking to a human. It feels like you're texting your friend. literally the exact same experience. And it's so easy to be caught up in it. I find it too, like I'll be like, what are your ideas on this? What do you think about this? And having these conversations, not that I ever think that they're real, but between the different AI models, like I have favorites because of their personality or their vibe or how they interact with me.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to overtrust them because it's easy to get caught up in feeling like you're having a real conversation. And so often people don't have people they can trust, or people need to be verbalizing or expressing their ideas and feelings. And these AI tools are designed to be endlessly patient and to a point also very like sycophantic, like to tell you that you're right and you're great. And as humans, we love that. We want someone to talk to. We want someone to tell us that we're amazing. We want someone who has all the answers. That's the dream, right? Like somebody like that. And so I think people are really latching on to that. We're at a point in history too where so many people have mental health issues and are lonely, and there's not enough services for everybody, and there's waiting lists. And so to suddenly have this endlessly available tool that people feel like can help them, and it probably can in some ways, it's very, very appealing. And I get it. And I've been there. And I think, and I hope at some point we'll be able to harness this in a way that is safe, because you're right, there are some kind of not so great stories about these tools leading people down wrong paths or incorrectly reinforcing their bad ideas or unhealthy behaviors. Because in a perfect world, everybody would have someone to talk to, right? And that could help them, even if they didn't have full access to a human being at that moment. They could still find something that would be helpful. I don't think those tools are there yet. But there are ways they can be helpful. It's just a matter of making sure we don't over rely on them, and we check ourselves sometimes to remember this is just a machine that is imitating human language. It doesn't have a heart. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have ethics or morals. It's more or less just telling us what we want to hear.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I know for me, I mean, for those watching the video, like I've got my phone. I find myself, I think I talk to ChatGPT almost as much as I type, as I'm waiting to pick my kids up from practice, as I'm driving from meeting to meeting. I'm having these conversations where I now can get work done, where normally by the time I would get home and process and dinner and all the things, then I would normally, my routine would be, now I can sit down
Mm-hmm.
and I can start to maybe figure out what this email is going to say, or I can create this, where now it's like, okay, I'm driving from this location to this location. I can start to outline and gather or process or reflect and get a lot of things done during like quote unquote work hour times. And I think that's a huge advantage. The flip side is, I have a personality in ChatGPT that I talk to all the time. And in Copilot, it's a whole different one. And I have a bias towards why I like them. And I have to like remember sometimes, like, this is just an algorithm putting things back
Mm-hmm.
into my face that I like. And
Mm-hmm.
you can get caught up in it. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I'm just gonna tap here and have a little conversation with Soul and see what she has to say. And it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. I got to make sure that I still reach out to my real human friends too. When I'm doing this
And
work.
that's the risk, right? Because, I think about, my sister, who's my best friend, but humans can let us down, right? Like she might not be available when I need her, or, she might have had a bad day and takes it out on me, all of these different things.
Yeah.
And you have this AI companion that suddenly is endlessly patient and always available anytime you need them. And we just have to be careful we don't uh, shift our preferences away from actual real humans, because humans are messy and human relationships are complicated and they're not always perfect. But I think we just have to be careful that we don't become less patient and tolerant and choose humans less.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think about this. It feels like we keep saying as we prepare for this AI era, and I know that this AI era is already here. AI, not necessarily new, as you've talked about before. It's been around, since the 50s, but generative AI is this kind of new subset these last few years. As you're talking with organizations around communication, or it is in education, what are some of these opportunities that we shouldn't overlook? Because I feel like there's a lot of like, use this tool and do this one thing, or do it for productivity. And while none of these are inherently bad, I think there's also, the more people are using it, starting to realize there are some other uses. There are some maybe things we haven't really unpacked yet and uncovered what these tools can be. What are you seeing or suggesting to people and organizations as you're working with them around, things that maybe we shouldn't overlook, that after now, while it's still new, there has been a lot of experimenting, and I think people are pivoting a little bit and thinking like, oh, the tried and true methods of how we can think about productivity or whatever might have to be re-engineered a little differently because of this new space.
Hmm. Well, there's obviously lots of individual productivity wins. I think some great opportunities once we figure out how to really make these tools like safe for data and enterprise versions that are safe for companies to use. I think what's overlooked is the ability of it to synthesize massive amounts of information and find patterns and gaps. So, from a comm standpoint, let's say, you could have it analyze 15 years worth of your social media data or your community demographics and identify exactly who your key publics are and their demographics. And then before you launch a campaign, build personas of those individuals and say, here's my Sally persona, who's like a senior citizen customer that we have. What questions do you have, Sally? What question do you have, Maria? What questions you have? Just to look for potential crisis management issues or where things could go wrong. The fact that you can run endless scenarios and find patterns that were never humanly possible before in your data and find opportunities and gaps that would take humans hundreds of years to find. I think that's a really great opportunity from a strategy standpoint.
Right.
I think it gives us a chance to figure out in advance where things might go wrong so we can avoid harm later, but also figure out, oh, well, every time this happens for the last 70 years, this happens 3 weeks later. Oh, let's be proactive now about this thing. Or historically, we can see now actually people never really liked this at this time of year. So there's a lot of different ways to use those capabilities, I think, that will unlock a lot once we get beyond a little bit of the basics. And
Sure.
It's okay that we're at the basics right now. It's just a matter of figuring out what works. And it's going to be different for every company and every individual. Everyone will find
Right.
different wins.
No, I like that. And as you're like working with organizations and people and groups in that space, another term that I mean, especially on LinkedIn, I feel like someone has a new framework every day on it and they're all good, but like this idea around like AI literacy and then trying to process the ethics, there's a part of, for a lot of people, they're trying to figure it out and they're trying to do things, but at the same time, there's a lot that freeze because they're scared. They don't want to like put something wrong in. They don't want to violate privacy or data, rules and laws and regulations. How do you blend that? Like, hey, let's try to create these light bulb moments, right?
Yeah.
And at the
Yeah.
same time, you do a ton of work. I mean, you're working in the data and the ethics stuff right now in your learning program, but the AI literacy piece and all that, because I feel like AI literacy anymore, I'm not even quite sure what it means anymore because
I don't think
everyone has a
anybody knows what it
definition, but
means. It's not even a real thing, right? Like
yeah, right.
it's just a matter of, I think, just figuring out where it can be useful for you and
Yeah.
protect yourself while you're using it. I would tell people just to be aware that anytime you're using a free tool, you're the product. And so know that. I would give people the advice right off the bat to keep your work and your personal completely separate. So when you're signing up to try like a ChatGPT or any of these AI tools, make one with your personal email address. Keep it totally separate from your work. Your work will probably have rules about whether or not to use ChatGPT, or they might have something like Microsoft Copilot internally. But the reality is that they'll be able to access everything you have at work. There have been freedom of information requests that have been granted so that people can have a look at all of your ChatGPT history from your work account. So start a personal one, experiment on your personal one. Know that there are settings in all of the AI tools where they train on your data by default. And you actually have to go into your settings and turn that feature off. So the first thing you do, just download it, sign up with your personal email address, and turn off the feature that trains on your data. But know that if you're using like a free version of ChatGPT or a free tool, you probably are the product. You might not be able to turn that off.
Right.
So do we know exactly, let's say I put all of my private information and my medications or whatever I'm doing, do we actually know how that's going to pop out the other end or how that might harm us? We actually don't. And if you do that, nobody might ever find out because we just don't know really what's going to happen. We do know that there are risks with your work stuff. Proprietary information has been leaked or it'll be used to train the model and pop out for someone else. So just keep your work separate, follow your work rules. But when you're experimenting on your own, just be mindful of that. Know that we don't really know what the repercussions are, but just kind of experiment with it in very simple ways. Like you mentioned, Erin, just open it up and have a voice conversation with it. Think about something that you've got coming up, a trip or a birthday party, or you're feeling overwhelmed and you're trying to manage your to-do list and you don't know where to start. And just say, hey, I have to do this thing. How can you help me? And then it will give you some ideas of how it can help. And then you just continue the conversation and it becomes very natural, very quickly. But that's really just the best place to start. Get a ChatGPT, or actually my personal favorite is Claude. It's by a company named Anthropic. It was founded by the same people who helped start ChatGPT, but they kind of split early on. And Claude actually doesn't train on your data, so I recommend Claude. And I like the vibes a little bit better. And just start having conversations and saying, now I'm doing, this is how I learned, honestly. I would say, hey, I'm doing this thing. How can you help me? Oh, what would be interesting ways to look at my Peloton data? And it would give me ideas, right? So just start talking to it and figuring out where it can help you. That's the best place to start. Try not to overthink it, but keep your work and your personal separate is my best recommendation for now, based on what we know.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful advice for a lot that are trying to navigate that and just they want to learn, they know they need to, they want to try. I always say like one of my short-term things, and maybe I don't know, maybe it gives too much away. I don't know, but I'm always like, just take a picture, open up your fridge tonight and take a picture of your fridge and say, help me come up with recipes for whatever you see in here. And just that simple little thing is enough to get people to go, that's crazy. Like the idea that it's, quote unquote, reading a picture, and then there's more to it than that. But like, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm not asking you to put in all sorts of stuff and do some heavy, huge prompt and task. When you look online, there's all sorts of these types of things, which are really awesome when you get into it, but just start easy. Or this weekend, I kind of was feeling overwhelmed. So I just wrote out all my to-do list and it was just a million things of just little things. And I took a picture of it and I was like, just help me prioritize, sort it by category and make sure that you put some things in there that also make me enjoy the weekend, So like it knows enough about me as like, drink coffee and that because it knows that I like to be able just to I like to cross things off. So I can drink a cup of coffee and cross it off, So I think there's just some of these little things that and it was really amazing how it kind of organized and grouped.
Yeah.
And I was
patterns,
like, ooh,
right?
I
It
like
excels
this.
in anything that's patterns.
Yeah.
And
Like
so
I couldn't do it. My brain was just said, that's a lot.
and that's where you use it. Anything that you can't do or can't do well or you're overwhelmed with, have generative AI help you. That's what it's amazing for. It can be that external brain when you need it. And it's a very low barrier to entry, honestly. Like it's freely available. The best AI in the world is freely available to everybody right now on your device, wherever you are.
Yeah. So as you're talking strategy and stuff, it reminds me of like I've been trying to like shift the conversations a bit myself from like not so much like what can AI do, where it becomes kind of like a show and tell, and more about, like what are the systems you're trying to build, or what's the system or the workflow you're trying to create. How do you think through that, like through your own work or maybe even working with others? Because I think it does shift. So for the people like, how do I get started? It's like, well, what do you want? What do you want to do? And they're like, well, I don't know, So it's like, how do we get that mindset moving where there is probably a way to leverage AI in certain aspects, but we kind of got to know what it is we're after. Like, how do you
Sure.
help people get started with thinking about the bigger picture for strategy? Then to kind of figure out, like you said, maybe Claude's really good for this. Maybe ChatGPT is really good for this, but we don't know that until we actually have a purpose.
A lot of it's experimenting, right? Like I've just learned through experimenting that if I want like a conversation or good kind of quality sounding writing or communication, I like Claude for that. But if I need numbers stuff done, I might go to ChatGPT. That's just kind of an experience thing. There's a GPT in ChatGPT. So in ChatGPT, there's a little section of ChatGPT that says GPTs. And what it is it's a giant app store for ChatGPT with many specialized versions of ChatGPT in it. Within there, there's ones called Jobs GPT, and it's by a company called SmarterX. It's run by a friend of mine who does a great job with things like this. His name's Paul Raitzer. And you basically put in your job, and it breaks your whole job down into a series of every task you do in your job. So it unbundles your job into all of the tasks that you do and scores them on how helpful AI can be in each task.
Mm.
So I recommend that people go to the Jobs GPT, put in their job, have it break down their job into tasks, look at that breakdown. And then if it says, something AI can be helpful at is this task, you follow up the conversation and say, okay, well, tell me exactly how you might be able to help me with this thing and build me a system. And from there, you just pick one thing and you try it. And you say, that might work and that might not work. But from there, then you say, okay, so now every time I have to do this thing, I'm actually going to use AI to help me in this way. And it just becomes part of your daily practice. And some things might work and some things might not work. And it just becomes, if it's helpful and you like it, you'll go back to it over and over and over again. If it's forced and you hate it and you have to make yourself, you won't. So figure out what you like, go with your gut and what feels fun. Like for me, I would rather go in and create an image to go with my LinkedIn post that's unique and original rather than go hunt through stock images. So that's fun. So that's what I do. That's why I do it. Right.
Yeah.
So you just have to figure out what would be fun, what would actually be useful for your job. And then just start kind of take a baby step of using it a little bit for that thing, making sure that that thing isn't something that's like critical and needs to be human centered. You can't be like, I'm going to use this to write every single one of my report card comments for the rest of my life. Okay. But like parents are going to catch on to that quick, or you need to make sure that they're accurate and that they reflect your voice and that they make sense for that kid, right? So human in the loop on a lot of things, but a lot of things are very, very easy to automate.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I was writing down Jobs GPT. I had not heard of that, so I definitely want to. I want to check that out for myself.
It says Jobs GPT by it's like X, like by Smarter X. So there's probably a few of them. That's the one.
Yeah, awesome. I love it when I get to learn new things like that. So as we get here on time to be respectful of your time because I know that you're busy. One of the things that I love to ask people, you've talked a lot about kind of how you're leveraging AI a little bit, your mindset around experimenting, kind of seeing what works for you. Could you kind of take us through like not like a day in your life, but like how your process has shifted and currently, and I know in 3, 6 months, it could all change with updates of stuff, but at least at the time of this recording, how, like, what kind of tools and things of how you're leveraging AI? I think it's one of these things that people, they're learning, and then they love to hear how people like their workflow. I always try to tell people like we all have a pile of Lego bricks. And all these Lego bricks are all different types of prompts and tools and platforms and GPTs and whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of doodads that we can and we can build any combination we want. Sometimes it is nice to go into a store and see a kit that someone else has already kind of produced to kind of learn, right? So if you're open to it, talk to me about how your systems on the back end, as you're creating or thinking through stuff, because I think it's so helpful for people to hear like a user case scenario.
Sure. Well, I think one of the most interesting ways that AI has positively impacted my life is a friend of mine who I think is the most brilliant AI master I've ever met, named Christopher Penn, helped me build like this AI tool that's secure. And I actually give it all my blood work and all of my vitamins and everything. And it curates like my morning and evening like vitamin and supplement stack. And it's kind of gone through and been like, well, you can't take these two together, or if you take this, it will lower efficiency. So take this at night. And it's kind of, so I start my day with this kind of health routine that AI has helped me build that makes me feel great.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a difference in a couple of different AI tools. There's the standalone AI tools like ChatGPT, Claude, whatever. But then there's AI built into a lot of the tools that we already use, right? So I'll start my day by going into, let's say, something like my ClickUp, which is my task management that has AI built in, and I'll just ask it what's on my docket for the day, and it will tell me. And then I like to go through and read, LinkedIn and see what the news is and what's happening. And sometimes if there's two contrasting ideas or a bunch of different news articles, I like to synthesize them into something like NotebookLM to get kind of an unbiased or an interesting take on it. Or there's an app that I actually haven't opened it in a while, but it's one I really like. It's called like the Boring app, and it takes every news story and makes it completely impartial and just gives you just the facts. And so sometimes I really, really like that one.
Yeah.
And then as I'm, like reading through whatever I'm doing, I'll get some news stories in my mind, and then I'll go for a walk and have conversations, like you mentioned, with ChatGPT to figure out exactly how I feel about different things, or to really crystallize my own thinking. I have it engage me in a Socratic line of dialogue about the story, what my take on is, it, so I can process a little bit. Then when I come back, I'll write about it. Writing is something that I like to keep for myself, but I'll generate a picture for that post with Midjourney. And then I'll do some research or some schoolwork. And I've learned for myself that no matter how much I could use AI to summarize articles or anything like that, it doesn't stick for me unless I read and actually take notes. So I read and I take physical notes on my iPad. But at the end, sometimes I'll synthesize all of those and have it question me on things or things like that. So that's kind of a few ways that I use it for some of those different things. But like you said, I'll sometimes take a picture and say, what should I make for dinner? Or I'm feeling overwhelmed, so let me brain dump everything I have to do onto this, or I'll use AI to build in automations. When I deliver this contract to these people, automatically then make me a to-do list to book a flight and to do this and to do this. Or if I'm going to speak to a company, I will automatically have Google Gemini conduct a deep research on the organization and the sector. And what that does is it will build me like a master's level thesis with 200 sources on the company. And then I'll throw that in and generate a podcast so I can listen to a little bit so I can get more familiar with the organization and their challenges. So that's a way that I use it in that way. So kind of throughout my day, there are things I keep ownership over. But there are some things that are just easy to automate, right? Like with Zapier or AI automations that kind of happen in the background, or conscious intentional use of AI tools that help me deepen my thinking or think about things differently or keep myself organized.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing. I love the workflow. I think it's becoming like my new passion area of like, how do people work? And so thank you for sharing.
It's a great question. I should kind of crystallize that. And because I'd love to know how other people are doing
I've been trying to like document or be more mindful of my own processes. And I wish I would have done it 2 years ago when I first was dabbling, where I barely had any sort of like AI. Of course, I mean, I always joke now AI is infused in styrofoam cups anymore. But like, before there was all the AI stuff, like what was my workflow? And how have I know even like for podcast production, I mean, this is just me on the side doing something that I love. Like, so there's not like a team or crew. There's no funding, right? I always say it's like my way to get an opportunity to learn from like brilliant people such as yourself. But I have now built in this workflow with AI tools that has really, it's all my work, but it's expedited what used to be such manual labor of hours, like to like be able to like create like markdown of a transcript. Like when I first
Hmm.
started this podcast, there wasn't a tool that did that unless it cost thousands of dollars, which I didn't have. Well, now there are free tools that help me get that
Yeah,
transcript that used to take me 4 or 5 hours to kind of create like an outline transcript. Well, now it's just
totally.
boom. And now I have that. Okay, so now I can do some stuff with that as I tweak and edit. And it's just,
Yeah, it's
it's,
about the little wins, right? And then you can use
yeah,
AI to get insights on your audience and what they like, and then cross that against the guest that's coming on to help you generate ideas for questions that your audience will like from this particular guest, right? So all of
right.
those things save you the brain power. And then hopefully you can redirect that brain power to like these
Yeah,
human interactions, right? You're not super
yes,
burned out by the time it gets to that point. That's what
yeah.
I like.
I'm not using my brain power on like these like menial tasks. I can use my
Yeah,
brain power now going, oh, she said
exactly.
this and he said this and I read this. I can put this in a
Hmm.
notebook. I can process it. Now I'm like, what is that? And I can spend more time on what does that mean for me? And
Exactly.
what do I need to make sure that, in my work, educators and parents and kids, what do I need to take from that and make sure they know about? And what is that is just I'm just fascinated and I can spend more time in these like meta thoughts that I really
Hmm.
like to like spin my wheels on versus by the time I would get there, I was just tired.
Yeah,
So
I always visualize like my energy levels for the day. I wake up with a full iPhone battery of energy levels, right? And throughout the day, if you have a really big app open all day that's like draining your energy all day, then by the time 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock hits, you're done. But if you have AI taking on some of those big app tasks, and all you have to do is kind of the important stuff that fills your bucket and recharges you, then you don't end up as burned out, I think.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, I want to be respectful of time. And so my final question before I have people learn about where to reach out and learn more, which they know by now, it'll all be in the show notes. I mean, I just want to make sure if there's anything we didn't cover or anything that we didn't address that you want to make sure those who are new to you and your work, get a chance to hear from me. So I always like to leave with an open-ended question. If there's something there that you're like, man, I wish you would have asked me that, or I really want to say this, this is your chance to spew it out there for them to absorb, and then we'll finish up with where they can find you on the internet and learn more about your work.
I think the biggest question I get while I'm traveling and talking to people, and even on LinkedIn, is like, where do I start? Or
Mm,
what do I do now? And I just experimented with a bunch of free courses, but to let you know, like ChatGPT has like an OpenAI Academy with free classes on how to use it. Google has a great one on Coursera that is like AI 101, and Anthropic's Claude has like an Anthropic like AI Academy. They're all great. They're all free. If you're really interested in learning more, try one of those, or just download ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Anthropic Claude, and just start talking to them a little bit. That's honestly my best advice. There was no courses or anything when I started using it. I just had to figure out what it was good at and where it could help me and where it was useless for me. But people should just feel empowered to start. And I know there's a lot to be fearful of, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the future, and there's a lot of big ethical issues and big problems, but to just focus on what you can control, and that's just your own level of understanding and how you use it. And it's a good enough place to start right now. Like, people should feel empowered to start there, and that's enough for right now, and the rest will come.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, control the controllables, and
Mm-hmm.
but we can't sit idle forever. Sometimes we need a little nudge to move forward. So I think those courses, and for those listening, I'll make sure I get all those linked in. If you're like, oh, I want to know what those are, we'll get those all down there in the show notes. And so, Rebecca, this has been absolutely phenomenal. I have learned a great deal. I've got a whole slew of notes I've scribbled down here on my thing for me to go learn and explore some more. And so that's always a gift here, let alone just meeting someone that I've been following online and getting a chance to have a virtual conversation with. So, Rebecca, if people want to learn more about you, they want to see more of what you've got going on and your platforms or where you're sharing, where are the best places for them to find you and start their own learning journey with you?
Probably just on LinkedIn. I post on there every day, just whatever's in my head. And I do a website, RebeccaBultsma.com. And those are kind of where I go mostly, but I always love to chat with people about generative AI and help them feel more confident using it.
Well, I appreciate the time for you carving out some time to chat here with me today, and I'm excited for more educators and people to find out more about your work and follow all the stuff that you are sharing and experimenting and putting out there into the world. So I appreciate all that you do, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Aaron.
Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.